So, how to even begin talking about this movie? I'm still kind of like stunned after watching it. I'm still just trying to wrap my head around what I just saw. I got out of the film half an hour ago, and after the film like ended and the credits started rolling, I just was kind of lying there in my seat, just staring at the screen, unable to really move, unable to really, just overwhelmed by what I had just seen. And the only words that came to my mind was, wow, just wow. This is the kind of movie that doesn't come around too often. I was talking to my friend Abstract, and he said, Argent, this could be the best year ever for movies. And I think there's a really good case maybe for that. We had Dunkirk, we had Rise of the Planet of the Apes. There was a bunch of other ones that I can't think of off the top of my head. But this movie was incredible. I don't even really know how to start how good this film was. This movie, I'm just going to say right now, was 10 out of 10. This was a 10 out of 10 movie. This was incredible. If you're going to see this movie, I recommend if you can see it in IMAX or at least 3D. This was actually one of the few times I think 3D made the movie better. Fortunately, the theater we saw it in was the largest one at the movie theater, and it was big. And if you're seeing this, you want it as big as possible, as loud as possible, as HD as possible. Because this is probably the most visually impressive movie I've ever seen. And I'm going to stand by that. This probably had the best cinematography of any film I've ever seen. There could be some films that are like on the same level, like Dunkirk, a lot of Nolan films, but the cinematography in this movie was astounding. And I'm someone who criticizes movies from being boring all the time. You hear me complain about that. This movie was almost 3 hours long, and it was slow, and there were long periods without dialogue, and I wasn't bored. It was a trip. It was a ride. The soundtrack in this movie is absolutely phenomenal. This has got to be one of the best soundtracks of all time. It's very similar to kind of the original. It's that eerie, I'm trying to think, eerie, really heavy bass. Of course, they got Hans Zimmer to do it, which is another reason why this feels like a Nolan film. Hans Zimmer is the master. Like, every film he does movie for is just incredible. So you're sitting there and you're bombarded with this I don't know what you call it, industrial, techno, retro, futuristic music. And the theater I was in just had this incredible bass. And you could feel it pounding into your head and into your chest. And it just kind of rivets you to the seat. And then on screen, you just have these amazing cityscapes, incredible details. So probably the best CG I've ever seen. And just the use of light. The use of light in this movie is incredible. Just, it's hard to even describe. It's just, if you see the movie, just keep that in mind, because there's a lot of scenes where it'll start in dark, and then there'll be light from the ceiling or light from I don't know, an electric source or something, and it'll like periodically kind of go in and out and kind of like show the person, then go away. And it's the combination of that, the just spectacular CG. It's a very visually interesting movie. There's a lot of sci-fi movies that are slow but aren't really interesting. But in this one, there's always like stuff to look at. There's like the cool, like there's this huge dam along Los Angeles. When they're in Vegas, there's all this like cool old casino stuff, kind of like in a Fallout New Vegas. And in his apartment, there's interesting stuff going on in every scene in the movie. And for once, I actually was kind of glad that things were going slow, because that combined with the music, you were just so immersed into it. I just completely zoned out when I was watching this film. And I think that is the strongest aspect of this movie. Before, like, as you notice, I haven't really talked about the plot or the story or the characters, all of which is good. But this film is an experience. It's a trip. And I think what's good is it's very clearly knows what it is. It knows this is the strength of our movie, is the immersion, is the visual style, is the sound, and that's what we're going to play up. We're going to play to our strengths. And I think that was a good idea, and that was the decision that they made. So, what can I say about the plot? As with everything else, this movie just blows the original out of the water. Now, I'm not really a fan of the original Blade Runner. I found it slow. I understand it was supposed to be claustrophobic, but I just found it had that really weird 1980s vibe. You know, kind of like what the Dune movie had, that I just didn't really like. Everything was just really dirty and tacky, and I thought the lighting was really bad. Like, I had trouble seeing what was, like, going on in it, and it was just too slow. This movie, I think, fixes all the problems of the original. It does a very good job of paying homage to the original and being, like, a true sequel, while also being its own film. It's not trying to be the original movie at all. It's kind of saying this is a new Blade Runner for a new millennium. We're not going to be bound by what we did before. We're going to pay homage to it, but we're going to make this bigger and better. And what it did kind of remind me of was Ghost in the Shell quite a bit. The music was similar, kind of the themes are similar, a lot of the cinematography is similar. I think people were way too hard on Ghost in the Shell. I thought Ghost in the Shell was actually a pretty good movie. Like, it wasn't a great movie, but I really enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was a good film. This is kind of like that, but a lot better. So I'm not really sure how much I'm going to go into the plot, because the movie's like 3 hours long, and going into the plot would take a really long time. And I think if you watch it, you could just follow the plot. The Blade Runner movie, both of them I don't find particularly complex as far as sci-fi movies go. Compared to something like The Matrix or, I guess, Ghost in the Shell, or just kind of other films, the plot is pretty simple and straightforward. It's really about just some very basic sci-fi themes. What makes a human being and a real hero, free will versus determinism. At the end of the day, though, it's just kind of it's very, I'm trying to think how to describe it. It's very simple in a lot of ways. Like, the original movie was just about a cop, an aging cop who's been run down by the world and is found love and is trying to kind of do one last job to earn his redemption. And this one's kind of similar. It's a cop who's getting run down by the difficulty and monotony of his job, seeking redemption. And they both go in a very similar manner, and they both end in a very similar manner. And I think that's on purpose. So it's kind of hard for me to say much about the plot without just going really into it. And it's a really long thing. And I don't want to spoil this movie, even for people who might want me to spoil it. Because it's... Going into this movie, I refused to look at anything about it. I saw the trailer. The trailer was great. One of the best trailers ever, because it didn't reveal anything about the movie. That's a complaint I have about a lot of these films, is they just give away the entire plot. Like, they'll show they'll show everything up to and including the climax. They just won't show the conclusion. But in this film, they just showed nothing. They just set it up. It's a new Blade Runner movie. Harrison Ford's back. Ryan Gosling's the main character. There's still replicants. The Earth has decayed since the last movie. So when I came in, I had no idea what the plot is. And the plot actually starts like off in the first like 20 minutes or so. And it's a complete and utter, like, out of the left field. I didn't see it coming. I didn't expect it. and it kind of leads you through a whole bunch of different twists and turns, and it's hard to know what's happening. I'm having a bit of trouble explaining it, but it's the movie does a very good job of making you think, oh, this is going to happen, but then no, this is going to happen. But no, this is going to happen, and it throws clues out there, but a lot of the clues are there to be deliberately misleading. All I can say is nothing in this movie is accidental, and everything is supposed to be a clue. Maybe the purpose of the clue is to mislead you. Maybe the purpose of the clue is to give you some other idea, trying to give you some other ideas about what the truth is. But overall, it's a film where there's there is deliberately a lot of mystery around the plot. And I don't really want to talk about that because, in contrast to a lot of movies, I think going to see this and just experiencing it as a mystery film is really important and very useful. So I'm not really going to do that long a review of it because I think the themes in this film are pretty straightforward and I don't really need to dissect them that much. I think more than the plot, which I didn't. I liked the plot. I liked the dialogue. There was actually quite a bit of dialogue in this movie. Oftentimes, a lot of kind of long, slow films like this don't have a lot, but they actually managed to put a fair amount in this film. So I like that. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward. The plot. I think this movie will stand the test of time for its visual style, its music, and its overall just ambiance. It's an incredible ride. I can't recommend it enough. Go see the movie. Just stop watching this review. Go watch Blade Runner 2049. It is, all I can say is wow, just wow.